Hey guys, David Villa here. Welcome to another episode of GC Talks. Today, we have an episode called Rebel with a Cause. We have Graham Cochrane on today. You are going to love this episode. We sit down, we discuss all things kingdom business with Graham. Check it out. All right, guys, excited about this episode. We have Graham Cochrane with us today, a highly acclaimed entrepreneur, U.S. Today best-selling author, keynote speaker with a track record of building successful online businesses, also the host of the Graham Cochrane Show, a top 5% ranked podcast globally, where each week he helps people create more money, margin, and meaning in their lives. So with over 15 years of online coaching, content experience, over 700,000 YouTube subscribers across his channels, built multiple seven-figure businesses that require, and this is what we're going to get into today, less than 5 hours of work per week to run. Graham has established himself as a leading figure in digital entrepreneurship and personal development, and is dedicated to strategically aligning online business owners with their true potential. So I'm super excited. Also want to get into what you call effortless business as well, Graham. So I appreciate you being with me today, man. Thanks for hanging out.
I'm glad this finally happened.
Yeah, man, I've been trying to, I know you're super busy and I've been wanting to get you on the show. So I want to dive right into this as well. And we're going to talk about your book here in a little bit as well, which is your story. And I don't know, I might call this this podcast Rebel with a Cause, you know, because you definitely have a purpose and you're living it. And you know, we interview a ton of business leaders, and you know, it's interesting because what's interesting me about you is how you have, I believe, you know, really kind of conquered as a faith-based leader the work-life balance as well. And we're going to get into that a little bit because that's super intriguing. I think that, you know, a lot of people today, especially in the kingdom, kind of struggle with that. You know, my experience with business leaders, you know, they have problems kind of balancing that, and they're either workaholics, you know, and they're trying to I guess get off of that addiction, so to speak, which I can relate to, and you've done a really good job at that. So I want to get into that, you know, but first I want to talk about your journey, man. What, you know, you know, you've had some adversity. You know, you talk about that, and yet you've built, you know, multiple seven-figure businesses. And so what inspired you to start your journey as an entrepreneur and a coach to begin with? I mean, you know, you could do a lot of things, and that's not an easy task. What inspired you to kind of dive into that journey?
Something called the Great Recession. It was 2009. It just, you know, God was taking me on a journey. I thought I would be doing one thing. I mean, I thought I would be a professional musician my whole life, chased the rock star dream, had to come to grips with that not being a financial reality.
Right.
And then kind of floated for a few years as a young married couple, just taking odd jobs. And then we moved to Tampa with some friends to plant a church, and we were just going to help out, get jobs, and I was going to be the worship leader. Right. I was your worship leader. And this was 2009, and during a span of 10 months, right when we moved down here, I lost 2 jobs right after we had bought a house, had our first baby. So it was like this big, exciting transition, then lost 2 jobs. It was really hard to get a job during that season. It didn't really matter what degree you had, and I was just looking for anything.
Right.
But I didn't really even want a job, you know, like it was like the thing of, well, I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be a creative, and that didn't work out, and regular jobs didn't work out. So in a way, losing those jobs and having my back against the wall, as scary as it was kind of like my invitation to try something different. Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't inspired to start it. I just kind of had to find a way to make a living. Right. And I decided maybe I could find a way to make a living doing something I enjoyed doing. And so for me, it was, could I build a business around music? And that's kind of how it started.
You know, it's interesting, no matter really what entrepreneur you talk about, someone that's, I've said to some people recently, you know, if you look and study anyone who's experienced any level of success, whether it's in the world or the kingdom business world, you know, there's a couple of things I think that every person that has made it or that you would consider has arrived at a certain level of success. I think there's 2 things they have in common. I think one thing is every one of them wanted to quit. And the second thing they have in common is they didn't. You know, and so it's interesting. It doesn't really matter what your background is. again, you're saying, hey, I didn't necessarily aspire early on to be an entrepreneur, to start a business. I just kind of had to. And I think that adversity, especially as a believer, adversity kind of pushes you, if you allow it. It's really a catalyst for growth.
Right, because it's a clarifying agent, right? Like when we were broke and I had now a wife and a baby, and I was 26 with a college degree and no income, and we were on food stamps, it was like this moment of, for me, like shame and embarrassment, and like, well, I can't even like hold a regular job, It was like a clarifying moment of, what do I really want out of life? What am I really doing? Is there a better way? All these questions start coming up, so it forced me to maybe do some of the inner work I hadn't done. And I had also, like, as a person of faith, I don't know, everyone's journey is a little bit different. I was really bitter towards the Lord that I didn't get my music dream. Because I was one of those guys that was like, everyone around me is like, you're going to be a musician, this is what you're supposed to do, you've got the chops, and I pursued it hard. And when that dream died, I was like, well, I have no plan B, like, or this is what I was made to do. And so I was probably 4 years removed from being bitter at the Lord of, why didn't you give me my dream? But this moment for me, this adversity was like a moment of, maybe I can have a bigger view of what God's doing. Maybe God does care about my dream, but maybe I need to get more curious about different ways my dream could evolve and still create a meaningful income. So that's where I got a little bit more creative, because I had to.
That's great. Can you share? I mean, is there probably a lot of them? But is there a one maybe that stands out, a pivotal moment from transitioning from job loss during the Great Recession? I mean, I remember that. I remember that year. We were probably doing $13 million in business, and I had it in 1 month. I had almost $700,000 in business in the form of employees, drivers, walk out the door in 1 week. And that'll get your attention. That'll get your attention when 85% of your revenue walks out the door. And so I remember that. And so that was a pivotal moment for me, and it took me about two and a half years to shift. Wow. And really get over myself. And so is there a pivotal moment that you remember specifically that, transitioning from that job loss during that Great Recession to building thriving businesses? Is there any pivotal moment that you remember that kind of just, stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, there's like there's two categories of things. There's things you can't control, things you can control. I knew a lot of the things I couldn't control. I felt very out of control. So one of the pivotal moments was just the decision of like, well, what can I control? And for me, I was very interested in content creation. I didn't really know you could make a business around it, but I thought it'd be a good lead gen tool. If I had a blog, if I had a YouTube channel, could generate some leads for what I thought was a freelance business. So I got really clear on, I'm going to control the controllables. I'm going to go in my office. I'm going to work on getting in front of as many people as I can that could be an ideal client for what I thought was going to be recording people's music. That was my background, and turn that into a business. That was pivotal because it just got me into the habit and the discipline, which I think discipline is like the secret sauce to most successful entrepreneurs. Most people know what to do, they just don't want to do it every single day or don't have the grit to do it. So I built that habit of discipline. I think the other pivotal moment was probably 18 months into the journey when I finally was starting to see some momentum. I mean, it was like a year and a half of making hardly any money. I think I made $10,000 in my first year, like full time. It's like pretty pathetic. I could have worked at McDonald's and made 3 times as much. But it's like realizing there was that moment where enough people are seeing my stuff that you could see the demand. You could almost see the precursor to the revenue. You could see the interest and people saying, this is different, the way you're teaching this is different, I want more of this. I was starting to build trust with people online, which in my type of work, especially, I mean, all business is around trust, but especially online business where you can't see me, I can't touch, you can't interact with me physically, you have to focus on building trust. And so I was starting to see that trust built. So the moment I had some more things for sale, there was a moment of convergence where then people were turning into customers. And I remember the moment where my whole goal was to make $60,000 a year, because that would replace Shay's salary at the time of $30,000 before she stayed home to have our daughter, my old $30,000 salary. It's like, if I could make $60,000 while working from home, doing something I love. And so when we got to that point, which took about 2 years, to me, I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. But it's also when I knew what I was doing was working.
Yeah.
And we could iterate from there.
I want to shift into your faith, your work-life balance here, and that in a second, what you call effortless business. But it's interesting. You said something, and I'm super big on that. I agree with you 100% on discipline. I've said that my habits today, whether it's working out or business, family, were disciplines yesterday. So discipline's hard, right? And it's interesting because I think the last statistic that I looked at with businesses, new businesses, 65% fail within the first couple of years. So there's a very good chance that you're going to experience failure, almost certain. But the discipline or the commitment to not quit. And most people, if they get to the place where $10,000 in a year, which is very common. I remember days, weeks where I made nothing, starting my business, and I left a big salary, and my wife was questioning me like, you made the wrong decision. What are we doing here? Yeah. And but that discipline, that discipline turned into habits, and so I'm a big believer in that. But it's interesting because so you didn't quit, and I think that's the sticking point, right? That discipline there. But B, it seems like that even the way you were thinking, like if I can just make 60 grand, because it sounds like that there were some things that you weren't willing to compromise even then, with regards to family. Like I don't want to go out and sacrifice my family, my children, and I think you had those balances in the right place. And so, kind of jumping into what you've trademarked as the effortless business concept, talk about that philosophy, because I think that's intriguing. I love it. It almost makes me a little envious in a sense of like, man, it's because I work a lot of hours, and I think that I look back and think, man, I don't want to not work, but there's so many other things I want to do, and you only have so much time. Yes. And so is that where that came from? Was it just like I only have X amount of time and I have these other priorities, or explain that a little bit?
I mean, for me, that's how it started, because we were like church planning, and I was building a brand new family, and I was starting a business. And so there was the three big things you're building: a church, a family, and a business. So there was already limited time. So in a weird way, I was limited from day one. Like I didn't have a whole day off on the weekends, because the weekends were like setting up the band to rehearsal on Saturdays, and then set up and tear down church on Sundays. Yeah. So I had a mentor of mine say, you gotta take some day as your Sabbath. So like you gotta take Friday then, if you can't take a Saturday or a Sunday, and you gotta take Fridays off. And I was like, dude, I'm not even making any money working 5 days a week. How am I gonna make money working 4 days a week? And he said, you gotta trust God in this. And so from day one, I never worked on Fridays. We made that our Family Fun Fridays, and it was kind of out of necessity to have time with the family. So in a way, that kind of was baked into my worldview. But then as I start to see the business grow, I became like addicted to like testing. How could I grow this, or worse, keep it the same while working fewer hours? I just wanted to see, as a matter of efficiency, what really moved the needle in the business, and what just was like busy work that felt good, but didn't actually. So I was every year always testing and eliminating. So that was part of a personal quest. What I've discovered now, and especially with coaching people, because I think especially successful people, they love to work, they want to work. I don't think the work is the problem, but I think that the way I put it is that effort-fueled businesses fade, but energy-fueled businesses flourish. So it takes effort to start something. The problem is if we just still run off of effort, if that's our primary fuel, if I just keep pushing and if I keep grinding, that's how I'm going to get to the next level. I think that's how you start a business, is with a little bit of effort. But at some point you have to start to optimize for your own energy, like what fuels you versus what drains you. And that's where you learn what to delegate, what to eliminate, how to restructure your business. Like you can really completely restructure your business based off of what you need it to be for you, so that you can show up your best. And it's a lot like a roller coaster in that, like, it takes effort to get to the top of the roller coaster. They're pulling you up, but then they let go. Yeah. And it's all stored and created energy. Like, you can ride that ride forever. If the track is built right, you never need more fuel. Yeah. It just keeps running off of the stored and created. And that's the ideal place for the effortless business, is one in which the business owner and the business itself knows how to optimize for his or her energy. And they could run forever, but it's not about how many hours you work or how hard you push. It gets to a point where you actually, you almost feel guilty because it doesn't really require you as much as you think it does for it to succeed, whether that's you've empowered people well, you have a better business model, you've raised your prices and fired half of your clients. Like there's a lot of ways for it to work depending on the business. But I think it's just weird for business owners because that's not what got them there.
Yeah, it's foreign for sure. I mean, and I think a lot of business owners, and I think this is where the church, the church has maybe lacked. And I think why it's so important for guys like you and me and many people we know to really kind of, be a voice out there for kingdom business, because the model for business, if the church has done, I think, such a poor job as a whole, or just maybe not understood it. They've left it to the world. That's a world thing. Yeah. I'm going to church on Sunday. I'm going to church on a Wednesday. I'm going to a small group, and I have to make a living. I have to do something through the week, and if we look at it that way, I think that the reason I'm so passionate about the marketplace is because 99% of the people that attend church, they don't work at a church. Right. They have a job, and I did some things through a podcast and a Bible plan where I talked about rising and grinding, because I had you hear that phrase in the world, rise and grind. Right. And it's and I've said that. I remember putting quotes out on what used to be Twitter, back in the day, about hustling and rising and grinding. And when God really showed me what I was saying, I stopped, because the word grind, the definition of the word grind literally means to crush into small particles. Yeah. And so that's not a plan, right? We're not built for that. And matter of fact, the Word of God says I'm crushed, but I'm not perplexed. Yeah. And so literally, God's changed my whole philosophy on that, and I'm with you. I love that. Can you discuss a couple of principles or strategies that maybe underpin the concept of the effortless business? Is there a couple of things that stand out that that are some strategies or?
Yeah. So one that's really simple and powerful is just doing an energy audit. 2 columns on a piece of paper. One side is tasks, people, and environments that drain your energy. Mm-hmm. Usually easier to start with that one. And then tasks, people, and environments that give me energy. And they don't have to necessarily be business related. So for example, on the tasks or the environments that give me energy, one of them is airports. Like I love being in an airport. Like right. I get energized, I see people traveling, but that might be on somebody's draining list. Yeah. But like for me, knowing that that's on an energy giving list means that travel, especially relates to business as well, is going to be a fuel for me. So it's going to be a good thing for me. Right. Obviously, too much that I'm away from my family, that contrasts with my other values there. But that's good to know about myself. Certain tasks will drain me. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I creating the video thumbnails for my YouTube channel? Like, even though I know how to do it, I've done it for 15 years, I get tired. I shouldn't be doing it because it actually drains me. But if I loved it and it fuels me, I should keep that in my list. So kind of getting clear on not what I should or shouldn't do, but what gives me energy and what drains me. It's very personal. And also changes every season. So I would do an energy audit just to have some awareness of some things in your day that you could eliminate or automate or delegate. And then the other one that comes up for me is the idea of a dream week. It's like I think most entrepreneurs don't even have any clue what their ideal week looks like. But you get to decide what your week looks like, especially if you're an entrepreneur. I mean, that's one of the privileges that most entrepreneurs don't take. Yeah. And if they did, they would have more joy and more energy to then serve their clients and their team well. So for example, I map out, I say there's 4 things you need in your week. You need recharge time, which is like whatever fuels you up, whether that's reading a book, playing pickleball, exercising, whatever it is. Recharge time. You need relationship time each week, so time with your family, friends, people that fuel you. You need rainmaker time, so you need to actually do the things that bring profit into the business. Yep. And then you need reflection time. That's one of the biggest ones that I see missing for entrepreneurs is time to think back on what's working, what isn't working, how am I feeling, how am I not feeling. Like, we just go. Yeah. So as long as you have those 4 elements and you decide how much time and where they are in your week, I think I see my clients when they build out their dream week, they feel like a kid again, because if you can have a great week every week because you designed it, like you win every week. Yeah. And a dream business is just a dream week repeated over and over and over again. And there's no future date when you're going to get that. Like we keep thinking if I make enough or I exit or this happens. Like you have to decide I'm going to enjoy my week every week right now. Then I feel like you can show up with more energy to do the things your business needs it to do, and it doesn't feel like a drain.
That's awesome. And I'm sure, and we'll get to that at the end, how someone can contact you, but you coach, and so this is something where you probably take on a select group of clients, but
Yep.
I can tell you that there's going to be some people that will be interested in maybe reaching out to you on that, because that's huge. So Dream Week, energy audit, those are that convicted me there. Both of those are things I'm going to look into immediately, because it's so true, man. There's things that we do as entrepreneurs that fuel us. And, it's interesting. I was talking to some of my team this morning about synergy, and we like that feeling when synergy happens, and, I happen to have a team here. But, synergy is feels good, but it's one of these things that are created individually. And I think that it's so important to find what fuels us, because really those are the magic moments we're looking for in business, and that's great. But then there's things we do that drain us. And we've all done that, and that's super enlightening, man. I love that. I want to get into a little bit something obviously that's huge to you. Started out this way, and but balancing your business and personal values, and then get into your faith and so forth as well. How do you? And you've done a good job. I've watched you, and your wife does a great job at this as well. You guys both seem to have this down. Diving into how you align, your businesses with your personal values, your faith, family, and so talking about like the integration of faith and business. How does your faith values shape your business practices and decisions?
Yeah, man. I mean, you've got the sort of the moral things that are the, in theory, easy ones. Like don't cheat people, do things with integrity. But there's also, this is what I love, this is the challenge of being a believer, but what I love about it, the promise in Scripture is that you don't have to chase success or strive. It's like the kingdom is really a kingdom of receiving, and it's not like grace is not opposed to effort, but it's opposed to earning. I love that line. But I think in business, it's really hard for us to think that we could receive anything. We feel like I got to go do it to create an action to get a reaction. But I think as a kingdom person, I take into it like, okay, I'm going to show up and do what God's called me to do, but I'm going to trust Him for the results. And so I'm not going to put as much pressure on myself, so I can actually shut the doors. I can actually leave the office. I can actually take a vacation and trust that God can do more while I'm sleeping than He can while I'm awake if He wants to. So it's really not, I never viewed it as, so this is how faith interprets it for me, is that it's not about how many hours I work or even how hard I work or even how good my strategy is. Because I know I'm not that good. Like I look back in the early years of my first business, which was in the music space, and like nobody knew who I was. And there was no reason why certain inflection points happened. I mean, I was faithful with what little God gave me, but there was favor, there was all these moments, things that you've talked about that I 100% resonate with, of like, dude, I am not this good. And that gave me a lot of confidence that I don't have to be that good. I just have to stay in step with the Lord. So I think that's a huge part of it, is there's less pressure to perform. Another big piece of it is like, I view what I do as ministry. So in the early days, I had a friend who was a pastor of mine, and he and I kind of differed on this, which he thought I should spend less time in my business and more time doing ministry. And I felt like, well, God is kind of calling me into this business and putting His hand on it. I think I'm reaching more people in the marketplace than I would doing quote unquote ministry. And I started to shift my view on it and viewing my work as my ministry. So God's putting me in front of a lot of people. So I view that as an opportunity, even though they're coming to me for business advice or in the early days music recording advice. I'm going to, in such a effortless way as I can, normalize faith, the church, morality, God, and weave it into everything I'm doing, so that people think like, oh, this guy actually goes to church and believes in Jesus and like acts like it's a normal thing. And it has opened so many conversations where people, they respect me because of what I'm helping them with. They're confused by my faith, but now they're at least intrigued, and that's led to so many cool conversations and open doors.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've said that again, the church is focused so much, and it's good. so much on, feeding the homeless, helping, the widow, helping the, helping the struggling, and doing what churches have done.
Yep.
When it comes to, but I've often said that there's these successful people that are out there, or these driven business leaders that are out there, and the stress that comes, with that, when you, especially if you don't know the Lord. I mean, it's stressful enough whether you do or not, and the pressure, to have to succeed, and the not winning, and discouragement, all the things that come with business. And if you didn't have like the Lord to lean on, I can't imagine that. And I often say there's somebody probably in the tallest building in the highest skyscraper that could possibly be thinking about ending it all. Their marriage is falling apart. They're addicted. To substances and things like that, and they're just because of the pressures. And so how do we reach them? But I think that it's so important because the gospel is the gospel, and it's not something we came up with.
Yeah.
It's something that God came up with, and everybody's a candidate for it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important. So when they see that, it does normalize it, and they're searching for something just like anyone else is, but they're going to be attracted, I think, to somebody somebody like you, somebody that's a kingdom business leader that also can relate to maybe where they are. And I think that's the gravitation there. And I think that's why it's so important for marketplace leaders, for kingdom business leaders. And so kind of moving into that, because a lot of our audience is our kingdom business leaders. And so talking about really empowering kingdom business leaders, I want to maybe explore, as we have a few more minutes here, how can some of your strategies help, the kingdom business leader uncover, their uniqueness, because your businesses can't be any different than somebody else. So it's not about what you do.
Right.
Everybody has their what they do thing, but bringing it into just their uniqueness. What are some strategies you found that are most effective in helping business owners in the church, in the kingdom, uncover their uniqueness and reduce maybe their work hours and really, really kind of dive into their God-given purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I always, if a client comes to me and they have a goal, I want to make this amount of money, or I want to have this thing, like I always want to push back to well, what's your vision for your life, your life? Mm-hmm. And it's something we talk about in the book Rebel too, is starting with desires and then getting clear on a vision, like a 3-year vision of let's just, forget your business for a second. Because to me, the business is a vehicle to serve your life and serve other people, mm-hmm. but it's not meant for you to serve it. And typically we build a business and we become the servant of the business. It takes everything. And so we've got it backwards. So I say, before we talk about your business, what does you, the person, what does David want? And it's the whole, if we bump into each other 3 years from now, mm-hmm. and I haven't seen you in 3 years, I'm like, David, how you been? And you say, Graham, it has been the best 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, tell me about that.
Yeah.
What would you be telling me about? What would have to be true for you to say it's been the best 3 years of your life? That's a question I like to start with and get clients to journal on, because then they kind of get to what really matters. Well, my wife and I we'd finally be close again. We'd be having date nights. My kids would be doing this. I would be healthier. I would be working less. I've taken that trip to Europe. Whatever comes up for them, that's more of what they really want out of life. That's more real. And there might be some business goals in there too, but at least you have a bigger picture of where you want to go. And okay, and then how can the business help you get there? Because if you want more time with your wife or your kids, or you want to have time to exercise, or you want to get out of debt, but you're just focused on growing the business, and all you do is then work more.
Yeah.
Even if the business is more successful, now it demands more of you, or you're not sleeping as well because it's more stressful, or it makes more top line revenue, but there's less profit or less personal take home. You're kind of going backwards to what your vision is. So I always say start with a vision, and it's always amazing how, I had a client who said, he came to me and he said, Graham, I want to make $100K a month. And I was like, okay, well, let's go do this 3-year vision thing. He comes back in 2 weeks, and I was like, what was your biggest takeaway from the 3-year vision exercise? He said, my biggest takeaway is I don't need $100K a month. I know exactly what I want out of life, and I actually could go do it right now. I want to leave Tennessee. I want to move to Florida. That's where we vacation. I want my wife to be able to work with me in the business so we can homeschool the kids and all be at home together and live on the beach. And I can actually afford the house I want right now, and we're going to move next month. And like, we hadn't even started coaching,
Right.
but all he needed was some permission to get clear on his vision and then think about, wait, I don't need a business goal to maybe make some of that happen. And maybe you do, but that's a starting point for sure. And then the biggest hack of all when it comes to actually implementing this stuff for me is Pareto's principle,
Yeah.
the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
80% of what we're doing isn't really amounting to a whole lot,
Yep.
but it takes up a lot of time.
Sure does.
So it goes back to the discipline. It takes a lot of discipline and I think a lot of courage to analyze everything you or your team is doing and have the guts to say, I don't know if this is really moving the needle. I think we're going to cut this entirely.
Yeah.
But it can free up a lot of time and resources for you and your team to just work on the 20%
Yeah.
and double down on that. And I'm a living testament to 80-20ing the mess out of everything, like
Yeah.
almost maniacally.
Yeah.
Where I'll cut offers, I'll cut content strategies, I'll cut marketing strategy, whatever is only moving the needle a little bit, but takes up a lot of time, I'll cut it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have a little bit less income short term, but have 4/5 of my time back
Yeah.
to then double down on the stuff that really matters. And so vision and 80-20.
That's hard. That's super important, and it's super hard to do because it's I think a lot of times we're married to, it took me a long time to learn that because we're married to ideas.
Yes.
I mean, that was such a great idea. It was
Right.
such a great, but it's not producing, it's not working, or, I'm spending way too much time, with too little ROI on this, and it's just hard. It's almost like it's almost like somebody said at one time. It's like you're killing your baby, in a sense. Like but we have to do that, and that's such great advice. Before I want to get into some of the other things you do as we wrap up here, but talk about the book for a second. I know it's been out a few months. Great book. I know our church and our business leaders groups went through this last semester, but and anyone can get this on Amazon, right? Or they can go to your website, and we'll have that up on the screen. But talk just a minute about this and why'd you write the book? Because I know books aren't money makers, and they're and I don't know. It takes time, but there was a message here. So just talk a little bit about why Rebel.
Yeah, this was a special one. It was my second book. I was spending a day with John Gordon, of all people,
Yep.
author and speaker, and I was trying to get advice on how to build a successful speaking career. I was like, bro, you're a top keynote speaker. You're traveling all the time speaking. And so I had all these questions. Like he came over to Tampa and had all these questions ready for him. And the first thing he said before I could ask him any questions was, well, what's the message of your second book going to be? Because I just released my first book.
Right.
I was like, bro, I just wrote a book. Like, I'm exhausted. I don't know. I haven't even thought about the second book. He's like, we got to figure out what the message of your second book's going to be. So the whole day ended up being about what I could write about next, which wasn't where I thought it was going to go.
Right.
And I couldn't come up with anything that I really wanted to write. And then he started asking me about my life story. And I told him about how I wanted to be a rock star, how I didn't want to go to college, how even when I lost my job, I didn't want to get another job. I wanted to start a business and all this kind of stuff. And he basically said, bro, you're a rebel. You don't do what people tell you to do you? And it was like one of those weird moments where I was like, I've never used that word to describe myself, but at the same time, in that moment, I felt more understood, or felt like I better understood my own story than ever before, because I almost saw rebel in a new light of like, oh, wait a second. A rebel is just someone who chooses to go a different path. Doesn't mean they're arrogant or brash or just trying to break the rules. They're just, maybe the path that everyone else says to go on isn't the path they feel they're supposed to go on. So I got really excited, and we felt like the Holy Spirit was like speaking to us in this moment. We started to ideate, ideas about what a rebel is, rebels in history, including Jesus, the ultimate rebel. Never did what anybody wanted him to do. But then within a couple days, God gave me this framework, and he told me to pitch the book to the publisher. And I was like, not ready. I mean, literally just off the first book. But they loved it. They signed it without any real proposal. It was just like a paragraph. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to write this thing. So it really was a Holy Spirit-led book. It's not technically a business book, and I'm in the business space. So it was very uncomfortable for me to write because I didn't really know where I was going.
Yeah.
But it was leading me the whole way, so I knew it was for a purpose.
Yeah.
But the idea of the book is really a book about identity and purpose. Like, who the heck are you?
Yeah.
And all of us need to rediscover ourselves, not reinvent.
Yeah.
Like, we are who God made us to be, but I think we've suppressed it, or we've had to become something else to adapt to life or work or whatever it is. We've kind of forgotten who we are, and it's a path to kind of figure out who God made you to be, so you can fully be your authentic self.
Yeah.
And enjoy all aspects of life.
I'll disagree with you on one level, even though it's for everyone. But I think it is a business book because I think that the identity crisis is real with people who might even have been in business. I mean, I grew up in church, but there's, we're living in an America where everyone's de-churched or unchurched, and so you're going to be running into people that have never darkened a door, and so when they become a believer, it's likely that that business person was a business person before becoming a believer. And so now you're faced with this identity crisis because you can't do business the same way you've done it.
Yeah.
You got to operate differently. And I think that this is actually a really good book for business leaders as well, because I think that the purpose is, or your why, the world says your why or your it or your motive. I think it comes down to like really finding that God-given purpose. Like, why did God create me? Because he's not surprised. He knew that on this day you were going to become a believer, and then this is what his purpose was after that point for your life. But so great book. I highly recommend it. And make sure our listeners grab a copy of this. It's called Rebel, and we'll have the info on the screen. But I want to just, as we wrap up here, I want to so some other resources. Like, how can listeners? I know, even, and I kind of want to just even plug what you do from all levels. I know when it comes to helping people grow their businesses, you do that. And if somebody wants to reach out to you and it's a right fit, maybe in a coaching space, which I think that anybody listening would probably see there's value there. So how can listeners engage with your resources or content to further their personal and professional development? What's the best way to do that, and how do you think you can help? What are some of the things you can do to help?
Yeah, man. So I work with some private clients, a handful at a time, and generally these are already successful entrepreneurs, men only. When I do private clients, it's men only for one-on-one, but it's usually guys that want to grow their business, but they feel what I describe as handcuffed to a really good business. So on the outside, it's really successful. Inside, they no longer love it, or they're burning out, or they don't know if they can keep doing it, but they feel guilty even feeling those things because it's so successful. Yeah. I help those guys rediscover sort of their identity in the business, get back to joy in their business, usually cut their work hours in half, and that usually is what allows you to actually get over the income plateau as well. Yeah. Because once you're creative again, once you're free again, it's just like in middle school when you don't need the girl, she wants you, it's like, but when you're really desperate for the girl, like nobody wants to be around you. When you don't need the business to be anything for you, whether it's identity or income, you actually grow because you're coming at it from a place of just stewardship and freedom. And so that's usually where I help guys one-on-one. I also have a group coaching program called the Effortless Business Accelerator that I launched so I can serve more people, including ladies. And so we do group coaching calls twice a month. There's a whole curriculum built around this effortless business concept. And that's all at grahamcochrane.com. Or you can check out effortlessmasterclass.com for a free training where I teach some of these concepts as well. Or on Instagram at @thegrahamcochrane if you want to hang out with me there.
Yeah, all of that's going to be up on the screen too. And I highly recommend reaching out to Graham. What you just said is so real. I can't tell you how many times in my business that I ran into those plateaus, man. Just, you're not passionate about what you're doing, bored. It's such a big thing and everybody listening can relate to this. And we don't share it. We keep those to ourselves because we're the leaders, or we've got an image to hold up. But man, it's so real, and you said it perfectly. It just stunts your creativity. And your growth, and I've been there so many times in my career. And and visionaries that are listening right now, somebody told me as a mentor a while back, and it just really opened my mind up. He said, as a visionary, you lived today yesterday, and you're living tomorrow today. But everybody that interacts with you has to get things done, and it just opened my eyes up to where how we think sometimes. I found myself there many times. Just I'm bored,
Yeah.
I mean, and what they say, an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Right.
That's the worst place you can be as an entrepreneur. And if you stay there too long, it's like quicksand. And man, I appreciate you sharing with us today. Just maybe 30 seconds, 40 seconds, anything you just want to leave with the audience, just something that, just kind of tying this thing, putting a bow on it. anything that?
Yeah, man. Can I share a quick story?
Yeah,
to make the point?
absolutely.
Last year, I invited 5 entrepreneurs to like a weekend mastermind here in Tampa, and they were all doing hot seats where they stuck in their business, and they all get up in front of the whiteboard and share. And throughout the weekend, they all had different businesses and different challenges, but I was taking note of like a common thread throughout the whole weekend. And at the end of the weekend, I said, guys, I did not expect this, but to me, the unifying theme out of all 5 of you is that you all actually know what you need to do in your business or what you want to do next that will get you to the next level. You just came here and needed permission. You needed some of us to look at you and say, that's a great idea. You should do that, David. For you to feel like, okay, maybe I should go do this. And I was like, it feels embarrassing that I charged you money and you came here and all I'm telling you is, I think that's a great idea, you should go do it. But the powerful thing is that I think there's a theme here is that most of us, especially if you're already at some level of success, if you got quiet and still, you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
But either you're afraid that it won't work or afraid that no one's done it before and there's no model to look out to see, can I do this? You're looking for permission. And so my gift would be to give you the gift of permission. Do the thing that God's put in your heart, even if you don't see anyone else doing it, and don't wait, because that's all you're waiting for is permission.
Awesome. Well said, man. Hey, I appreciate you coming on GC Talks today,
Thanks
man. It's been a great
me,
conversation. Thanks, man. All right, guys, I told you episode was fire. What a great conversation with Graham Cochrane. I love it. Absolutely. I'm going to go back and watch it myself. I'm probably going to hire him as a coach. Make sure you reach out to him. Hey, I'll see you next time on GC Talks.